Okay, guys, we are moving on to chapter 14 and 15. Since it was Wednesday, Augie and I both had to go home for dinner and to spend the night. I was worried about leaving the fort unguarded, but Augie swore, not in a bad way, that JR and Maury wouldn't show up during the week. We decided to go home early and get started on our chores. We hoped Dad and Graham would be so impressed by this proof of our dedication that they'd have no hesitation about letting us stay in the fort over the weekend. Still, I couldn't help worrying that all our plans would be for nothing. What if they say no? I fretted. They won't, said Augie. We gotta think positive, Wyatt. That's what Graham always says, anyhow. As it turned out, Augie was right. When Dad got home at 5, I had already taken the sheets off my bed and bagged them up with my dirty clothes, mowed the grass, taken out the garbage. The garbage was part of our plan, and I was happy to note that it was good and ripe. Dad brought home some chicken, so I lit the grill and helped him make salad and garlic bread. While we ate, he asked me what Augie and I had been up to, and I told him about inviting Gerard to sleep out at the fort. Dad's pretty cool, and I didn't see any reason to bring up Operation Doom. You're talking about what? Friday night? He asked. Maybe Saturday too, I said carefully, if Gerard wants to. Well, I think that's really nice for you boys to do, said Dad. It's fine with me as long as Mrs. DeMuth is comfortable with it. But you know what? Take your phone just in case something unexpected happens. I already thought of that, I said eagerly. I told Mrs. DeMuth we'd call her. Dad nodded in approval. And that was that. I could hardly believe it had been that easy. I called Augie. Graham said yes, too, he told me happily. Everything was falling into place. Dad and I played poker until he yawned and said, I've got an early class to teach tomorrow, so we'd better hit the hay. Like I said, Dad's pretty cool, even when he says corny stuff like hit the hay. You guys see my little cat back here? Deciding now is the appropriate time to clean himself. So, all right, on to chapter 15. I was in the driveway waving goodbye to Dad when Augie showed up on his bike. Do you remember Herkimer? Oh, did you remember Herkimer? I asked. Augie pointed to a paper bag in the basket of his bike. I put him in the bag in case we ran into Unc. I felt a pang of guilt about Unc's prize owl, lying decapitated all week in Bertha's trunk and now stuffed into a paper bag. You got his head too? I asked. Well, duh, said Augie. Yeah, we'll fix him and sneak him back into the attic, right? After the mission, I mean. Yeah, said Augie. A little super glue and he'll be good as new. Okay, I said. Well, I guess next is the garbage. We went to the end of the driveway and I took the lid off the big plastic trash can I had taken out the night before. I gestured to the can and then to Augie. Ladies first, Augie frowned. Man, that reeks, even through the bags. The rottener the better, right? I guess, wrinkling his nose. Augie looked inside. Then he reached in and took one bag and I took another. So that's it, I said. Let's go. Unc and Al weren't around yet, and we headed straight to the fort. Where do we start? Asked Augie. The first thing is to figure out where they're going to walk to get here, I said. I'm sorry. The first thing is to figure out where they're going to walk to get here, I said, which is kind of a no-brainer. They'll take the easiest, shortest route, just like we did when we first came in. They'll cross the field behind Al's and go through the opening in the trees at the edge of the woods, right? Only logical, Augie agreed. Exactly. We know that last time they went from there towards the stream, because we know where they crossed and found the squirrel guts, Augie finished. And besides, it's the easiest way. We did the same thing. So do deer and other animals. Then, from the stream, it's sort of a straight uphill line, I said, pointing. Augie nodded. Let's go. We got to work and never realized before that playing chess and being good at math would come in handy in real life. But it turns out knowing about angles and how to figure out distances and stuff can be very useful. From chess, I learned that you have to plan more than one move ahead of your opponent and trying to figure out what he might do before he does it. Add to that the fact that Augie knew everything in the world about the woods and hunting and all, and JR and Maury didn't stand a chance. We took a quick break for lunch, having cold dogs instead of hot dogs, which Augie said he liked better. While we were eating, we decided that planning Operation Doom was pretty much the most fun we'd ever had, and our victims haven't even shown up yet. We can't help it if we're diabolical masterminds, I declared. Genuine evil geniuses, agreed Augie. When we'd finished, we built a fire and sat around talking and laughing, imagining the way the operation would go down. I could hardly sleep, thinking about it. Augie fell right asleep and was even snoring like some old geezer in a cartoon. I kept poking him. He'd stop for a second, make some weird noises, and then start up again. He was so sound asleep, it made me think of the old trick where you put a sleeping person's hand in warm water, which for some reason, don't ask me why, but it's a scientific fact, causes him to go pee. But I didn't really want to do it to Augie. JR and Maury, sure, in a heartbeat, if the opportunity came up, but not Augie. Anyway, I noticed something as I was lying there. When you're sleeping out in a fort, only you're wide awake, not sleeping, you hear a lot of strange noises. Besides the ones your snoring friend is making, I mean. These noises all sound like they were made by something big, something sneaky, something sinister. That night, every rustle of a leaf, every crack of a twig, every grunt, squeak, and squeak meant that we figured we were wrong about J.R. and Maury right outside the fort's walls, ready to pounce. I'm sorry, that didn't make sense. That night, every rustle of a leaf, every crack of a twig, every grunt and squeak meant that we'd figured it wrong, and J.R. and Maury were right outside the fort's walls, ready to pounce. It just didn't seem fair that I was the only one on high alert. I needed backup. Augie, I whispered, jabbing him in the side. Augie, another jab. Augie, major jab. Why? Fine, I muttered. You go right ahead and sleep. I'll just lie here awake so I can save your sorry butt when disaster strikes. No problem. The next thing I knew, a bug or something was crawling across my face. I tried to ignore it and go back to sleep, but it wouldn't go away. Finally, I swatted at it and opened my eyes only to see Augie grinning 5 inches away from me. It was morning. Rise and shine, dude, he said, dangling the Slim Jim wrapper he'd been using to tickle my cheek. We've got stuff to do. I groaned. I can't believe you're making me now. I'm sorry, I can't believe you're waking me now after keeping me up all night with your snoring. Through my half-closed eyes, I saw Augie's look of dismay. I do not snore, he said. I got news for you, Augie. Whatever you heard, it wasn't me. Oh, so there was a dying warthog over there in your sleeping bag with you. Don't you think I'd know if I was snoring? Actually, I said, trying to be reasonable, no, because you were asleep. I know stuff, even when I'm asleep, Augie said. Look, I'm just telling you, you were snoring. I bet you were asleep and you were dreaming about me snoring. Augie, I wasn't asleep. That's the point. I was awake, you were asleep and snoring. As Al would say, end of story. What is the big deal? I don't want to be a snorer, Augie said in a low voice. Why not? I just don't. No reason? I don't like thinking I did something and I didn't even know I was doing it. I thought about that. It creeps me out. Like my body was taken over by an alien or something? Oh, I said. Yeah, I kind of see what you mean. Augie brightened up. So I wasn't snoring after all? No, I said. You weren't. I must have dreamed the whole thing. Augie nodded. I thought so. Geez, I was glad that was settled. It was time to get down to business. All right, on to chapter 16.